that you could very well see on the real estate examination. I also have a playlist of these specific keyword webinars, and I'm going to be starting another group of playlists. I want to get through my entire textbook. So sometime next week I'll be adding some new playlists, and I'm actually going to use the PSI and the other testing agencies. They have a candidate handbook, and they have an outline with specific topics that they cover. And so I'm going to be adding some playlists where I will be doing videos on focused topics within those categories. Now, why am I doing that? Because sometimes students, not students from Global Real Estate School, we want you to pass on the first attempt, but sometimes students don't pass the national exam. And hey, I want you to know firsthand, as a real estate broker and a manager of a number of agents, some of my best agents did not pass the real estate exam on the first attempt. They were the more profitable, best agents I ever have in my organization, and they did not pass the first time, so don't get discouraged. But our goal at Global Real Estate School is to help you pass on the first attempt. But let's say you don't pass. Well, they normally give you a printout, and on that printout they have sections on how well you scored and did not score. So the really cool thing, I just thought about this today, is what if I had playlist of videos and I will cover topics from those specific categories. So if a student does not pass the exam and they get their paper and it says they're weak in property management or land control, you can go to our website, you can look up a playlist for that section, and then you can watch those videos and kind of sharpen your knowledge for those subject matters so that you can pass that real estate exam on the next attempt. So we'll be adding those, but go over to YouTube, subscribe to our channel. I've had a couple of folks subscribe the last couple of days here, and that's exciting. But I have 184, last time I looked, 184 subscribers, but I want 100,000, so we got a long way to go, but we can get there. And I'm believing it, and so you gotta have some big goals. It's funny, I was reading in a Facebook group today, and a guy was kind of trashing a group, an organization, because they put some big goals out there, and he was, kind of really throwing the organization under the bus that they throw these big numbers out. And I happen to like this organization. I think they have some great training and but there were several people in the comments that said, you got to dream big. And that's the way I believe. We've got to dream big. So I want to see us get to 100,000 subscribers, and I want to see you become a successful real estate agent and dream big. You can do it, okay? I hope you're thinking about it now. So I'm going to get right into the definitions here. And I know that I have my video camera on so that I can kind of communicate with you, but we've also got the definitions there. So I'll try to make sure that I keep the definitions below my picture so that you can kind of see what's going on. And the first definition that we're going to look at here is called a general agent. See that? We've talked about this, and I know I've hit agency pretty hard the last couple of weeks, but let me tell you what, you're going to see questions on agency. You just will. And a general agent is a good example of, and I have that right here, a property manager. See that? General agent, you're going to have kind of a very limited power of attorney where you're going to be able to do some things for the owner that are specified within your agency agreement, the property management agreement. Remember, we talked about the listing contract or a buyer's agency contract. It's really your employment contract. Same way with the property management agreement. So a general agent kind of a limited power of attorney. Good example might be right there, that property manager. So keep that in mind. Don't forget that. And understand that a special agent is more like a listing agreement or a buyer's agency agreement. I really want to stress, and sometimes I'm guilty about just focusing on listing agreements, sellers and brokers. But a buyer's agency agreement is the same thing as a listing agency agreement with a seller. It's just, and you still have the same fiduciary duties, but you're just working for the buyer. But they're both employment contracts. A listing agreement is employing you with a seller, whereas a buyer's agency contract is employing you with the buyer. So a special agent is what you and I normally will have when we work with buyers and sellers as real estate brokers. It is for, and let's just kind of read through this together. Make that a little smaller. One, authorized by a principal, now that would be the seller or the buyer, to perform a particular act or transaction without contemplation of continuity of service as with a general agent. The real estate broker, do you see this here, is ordinarily a special agent appointed by the seller to find a ready, willing, and able buyer for a particular property. An attorney, in fact, under a limited power of attorney is a special agent, but I don't want you to forget that this, even though this says seller here, that could also be a buyer to help them find a ready, willing, and able property. See that? So keep that in mind. It could either be a seller or a buyer. Now, we talked about an expressed agency. That's where the parties express their intentions verbally or in writing. And these type of agreements must be in writing. And I know I have the word Missouri here, but in most states around the United States, those agreements will need to be in writing to be legal. So in Missouri and many other states, you will have to have a written agreement that's your employment contract for your listing to be valid. And then remember implied agency. We talked about that. Through your what? I'm listening. Someone out there just said it. Through your actions, you have implied that you're the agent for that buyer or seller. Generally, it could happen more in a buyer situation. And that happens when someone calls you up or you take someone out, you show them property, you're giving them advice, you're doing all these things that an agent would normally do under their employment contract as a buyer's agent, which would create fiduciary duties, but you've never had them sign anything and you're acting as an agent, so your implications, your actions, imply that you are the agent for that specific person. So we also call that an ostensible agency. See that right there? That these two, implied agency and ostensible agency, are the same thing. And then we have an agency coupled with an interest. This is an interesting type of I haven't seen this or heard about that on the exam for quite some time. But an agency coupled with an interest is, let's just say I'm the real estate broker and I loan you money to build a subdivision and build a spec house and develop a subdivision in return for the listing agreements. That type of an agency, because I have an interest in the project. I've loaned you money. You couldn't terminate that type of listing agreement with me because I have provided the financing. So an agency coupled with an interest gets a little deeper and it cannot be revoked. I don't think you're going to see that on the exam, but if you do, we just covered it right there. Single agency, and we have subagent, dual agency. Okay, let's talk about this because you need to know this. And I'm going to just pull up a writing pad so that we can use this. And I am going to take off my, there we go. Let's see here. Okay. So I'm just going to draw the entire iPad here so we understand this. Let's say that we have a seller over here, and we have a real estate broker, and we have a salesperson. Now, the salesperson knows the seller, correct? And they go out and get a listing agreement signed to sell this property. The listing is between the broker and the seller, okay? So always remember that. Listings are between the broker and the seller. Now you're going to see that question on the test in some form or fashion, and they're going to try to trick you in to believing that if something happens to the salesperson, whether they die, they go to another organization, or they leave the company, can this seller terminate their listing with the broker, or can the salesperson take the listing with them? And the answer is no. Why? Because listings are between the broker and the seller. So just remember that. You've got one correct and you're 99 to go, okay? In this example, if we have a buyer down here, and the buyer has a salesperson, I'm going to just abbreviate that, and there's a buyer's agency signed. Remember, this buyer's agency would be between who? The buyer and the broker over here for this salesperson. It's just like up here with the listing. In this example, let's say the buyer is interested in buying this home. This example here is called a single agency because we're just working as a single agency between the seller and our company. This group down here is also a single agency. That's a typical real estate transaction in most scenarios. Where it gets a little more complicated is if we have company A, I'm writing at an angle here, and we have the broker, I'm going to abbreviate, and we have salesperson A that's working with a seller, and then in this example, we have salesperson B who's working with the buyer. Now, they get a buyer's agency agreement signed with the buyer, and the salesperson gets a seller's agency agreement signed with the seller. Remember, the buyer's agency agreement is between the broker and the buyer. And the seller's agency agreement is between the broker and the seller. Okay, we've settled that, and we know that in reality. But notice both of these agents are in the same company. Who's working for who? Well, in this situation, and because agency laws get different from state to state, I just want you to understand that there is no single agency here, but in this example, you would have what is called a dual agency. Now again, in some states, dual agency is not allowed. In some states like Missouri, we can have disclosed dual agency. And I don't want you'll need to study the state laws on how agency operates in your state. But for the national examination, this would be considered or classified as a dual agency. Okay? Now, we had just looked at single agency. And why was that single agency? Because it's just our agency working with the seller, and another agency was working with the buyer. That's what you're going to see most of the time, not always. But in this example, both of the agents, the agent representing the seller and the agent representing the buyer, were both in the same office. So that's why we call that a dual agency. So you don't have to make it too complicated, and you will see some specific agency questions from your state license law on your state exam. But on the national exam, you could see a question like this that really reflects that we have a dual agency. And the reason being, whenever you have an agent who's working for both the buyer and the seller, and I gave you the example here of where there were two agents in that company as a dual agency. And again, I'm not getting in the real weeds with how agency works, but I have seen or heard about some questions. I use that word, I have seen, but I have heard about some questions where they were saying that an agent was paid a commission from both the buyer and the seller. Everybody knew about it, was okay with it. You have a dual agency situation in that respect. Okay, so back over here, we're going to go back over to our notes. And I mention that because we have single agency, which is what we just talked about right there. Single agency. And we have dual agency that we just talked about. Subagency comes about where you have, in this example, and this happened years ago, you have the broker and you have the agent and you have the seller. And we have this listing agreement that creates a fiduciary obligation. Remember that. Anytime we have an employment contract signed. Well, years ago, when we didn't practice buyer's agency a lot, the buyer would possibly call another agent and want to look at this seller's property. Well, the agent would call the agency, set up the appointment, take this buyer and go show the property. Well, in that scenario, that agent who's showing the property, who's with another company, since they did not have a buyer's agency signed, they were normally considered to be a sub-agent of the seller. Well, we don't see that a lot anymore. In fact, I don't even allow sub-agency with other real estate organizations. I tell them, yeah, hey, you have to be a buyer's agent and I'll gladly pay you a fee. The reason I don't want them to be a sub-agent is because I, as a broker, and my clients, the sellers, would be liable for any wrongdoings or negligence the sub-agent working for us may do. A lot of times you don't know who some of these agents are that show your property. And I don't want to put myself in a situation where I become liable for their actions. So rather than become liable for their actions, I just do not offer sub-agency, and I say to the other agent or company, hey, if you want to sell my listing, that's cool. I'll even pay you. My seller will even allow me to pay you part of the fee, but I don't want you to be a sub-agent. I want you to represent the buyer on your own, or you can work as a transactional broker in Missouri. But a sub-agent, all of a sudden now, just what it says, they are a sub-agent of us. And what if I tell them the basement's leaked? Or what if I give them a seller's disclosure that has some specific things we want to disclose, and that sub-agent goes back to the office and whites out or gets rid of some of the things on the document? Because they're a sub-agent, we're liable for their actions. So that's why I do not offer sub-agency, and I want to mention it there, but I don't want us to spend a lot of time on it. Now, you're probably definitely going to see something about a material fact. And notice what it says here. Any fact that is relevant to a person making a decision. Agents must disclose all material facts to their clients. Agents must also disclose to buyers material facts about the condition of the property, such as known structural defects, building code violations, and hidden dangerous conditions. Very important to do. Those are material facts. And think about it. Wouldn't you want your the person you're buying a home from, if they knew their basement flooded, to disclose to you that, hey, our basement floods when it rains? Or if they had had a fire in the attic and there were charred trusses up in the attic, wouldn't you want them to disclose that to you? Sure you would. And you have to disclose that. Those are called material facts, and they're important for you to disclose. Puffing, sometimes I've heard about this being on the exam. It's just an exaggeration. We have the best garden spot in town, or, the view's one of the best. And you don't read too much into these questions. Ask yourself, is this a material fact, or is this just simply puffing? Is it an exaggeration? So could very well see that on the test. And antitrust laws, we actually covered on our session last night. So you can do a search on our channel and you'll find some antitrust information. And I'll go recreate a new video on that. But since I just covered that last night, I won't go over that. You're going to have questions over agency, and probably going to have a question about a general agent versus a special agent. We didn't put down here, but remember, a universal agent is court appointed. That's where you do all of the affairs for the person. There generally might possibly be in a hospital or a coma or something like that. So make sure you know this agency information very, very well. Check out our other videos. We've got some playlists, as I've said. We've got some 5-minute real estate exam tips, and we need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Need you to tell others to do that. Be sure and go out to Facebook and Instagram. You can follow us there, Global Real Estate School. And by the way, you need to go to our website, globalrealestateschool.com. If you want to get your real estate license, we are approved in several states. We can help you with that, but we can also help you with lots of great training resources. So it does not matter what state you are in, we can help you at Global Real Estate School. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I'm having a great time doing this. I hope that you're learning something. I always appreciate kind comments, and again, like our YouTube channel, but I hope you will go out and make it a great day. I'm excited about you getting your real estate license. You're going to do a great job. Thanks again for watching.